So, hello, my name is Mike Mowen. I own Prudential Construction, and we're taking our first filming time today. I brought in a good friend of mine, J.K. Jackson, to kind of interview and ask questions. First podcast, first time on doing this. So,
Yeah,
hello,
and I
J.K.
love the opportunity to come in here today. So I'm J.K. Jackson. I work with Colliers International. I'm a commercial real estate broker here in Arizona. Been doing it for about 19 years. One of the things that
One of
Mike
the
and I
best out there. One of the best.
constantly talk about it. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. It is contracting, not just because he does it, but because we actually share a lot of the same passions with figuring things out, fabricating things, and it plays
Call me
such a
every time you have a lot of problems and you got
yeah.
to solve them.
Anytime I have an unsolvable problem,
Hi,
Mike's my
hi. This
guy.
is JK, and I want to start off with an apology. I'd like to have you do some work, but
It's every time, right? Almost verbatim. So, it'd probably be fun to kind of hear what is your background, because I think what we'll
sure.
get into is kind of what sets you apart. We'll break down the different types of contractors, the expectations that my clients have, that your subs, who are effectively your clients, have, and then our owners, and kind of we'll walk everybody through it. But the first thing's kind of, how'd you get to be the contractor that you are?
So the background is long. So summarize, just try and summarize, I guess, a bit. Started out life, thought I was going to be a police officer. Went down that path. Went to college for that, and right before I graduated, I had some stuff happen. Saw some things that were pretty traumatic and left and didn't finish it. I guys that do that all day long every day are some tough, awesome people, and I wasn't going to be one of them, I guess. So went back into the family business, into the trades. Worked for my father. Worked for Prudential when I was young. That took me through in the field. We were on a punch list crew for a number of years with a handful of guys. Had a spectacular superintendent that I worked for. He taught me a lot. Of course, I grew up under a dad that knew, I thought, everything. Still think he knows everything. Fabricating steel, motorcycles, anything fuel related was it still is my thing. Like to go fast and burn fuel, as they say. But got into the semiconductor world, building machinery, big equipment, CMPs, for a company, international company based out of Japan. We were here in Arizona. Then I went and left that after a couple of years, did real well in it, made my way up to field service and traveled around. Met my wife, got married, had to leave that because I was gone a lot, and went into an engineering company that did engineered product sales to mines, power plants, semiconductor, industrial, some commercial, but mostly industrial. So then spent the next 5 years in power plants, mines, semiconductor in the bowels of those places, tracing piping and process control and hydrogen, oxygen gases, all the resources and facilities that run those places, pretty massive back ends, and then got into kind of engineered product training of others, helped engineers for a lot of years to implement and or design their systems using the equipment that we and the parts and accessories that we sold, all throughout the different fluidics, process controls, actuation. Then got into a lot of mines and power plant type work, helping solve problems, different conditions, things broken down. They had repetitive conditions. How do we solve this? They would bring us in and say, "Do you have any equipment in your arsenal that would fix this, or can you just solve it? Can you help us?" Uh, Pretty much all the major players in Arizona, from Ralston Purina, Frito Lay. I could list all sorts of names, but you go in and you help these guys. Then got into some training, got to do the whole kind of like looking back now, it's like comedians on stage sitting on bar stool chairs with a a double doctorate guy, physicist basically, specializing in nuclear energy, boilerplate or original Navy sub. He ran the nuclear boiler room, old timer, oil field guy, and then me, room full of 150 engineers asking me how do I make this steam trap work? How do we heat this heater to cook dog food? How do we get the hydrogen from this point to that point? And it was hours and hours, days in these forums of answering questions, and most of the time, I just faked it until I made it. I didn't really know per se. I grew up with in a family really highly intelligent parents, and lots of opportunities to build and create. Constantly, my first cars were 3 wrecked cars that my father said, "Here's your car in there somewhere. You just got to get the good parts." Same with my bicycle. Here's 3 brake frames. I'm sure you can figure out how to weld this together. So it was, you want to go at the lake and fish. All right, well, you can, build yourself a little communication device. And I had a cell phone thing that I made that I had a headset. I'd catfish in the backyard and talk to my friends on the phone. Just all sorts of stuff. So been a builder forever. Left the engineering side, went into kind of back into the engineering side again, I guess. Did work for a company for about 10 years. We built stuff all around the world, multiple countries. We had equipment, machinery. I was in charge of engineering for a large portion of that. Directed engineering, had production, manufacturing plant space, had machinery that we designed, multiple patents in the paint and coatings industry. So did that for a long time, and then kind of got out of that and went back into the trades. My father was stepping down out of the company, and I kind of took over. So been a builder my whole life. Love to build and fabricate. Love welding. We have a steel shop. We do steel fabrication. Kind of, we don't really get into the big, huge truss type of thing, but we'll do architectural steel. We'll do some middle structural stuff. But love steel, love it all. That's kind of what I've done.
And that's how you got here. I like it.
Yeah, That's how I got here. So JK, I one of the things that when I talked to you before you said you'd come and do this with us today, I called you and I said, "What is it about our company that causes you to call us? Like, what is it? Why do you pick up the phone us instead of somebody else?" And I wondered if you might share a little bit about what you said to me when I asked you that question.
Absolutely. Yeah, and when you asked that question, I got kind of excited because you are truly my go-to solutions guy, and I know that usually means I'm bringing you a big puzzle to try to figure out. Right? Not always a fun puzzle, but a big puzzle, giant, unsolvable Rubik's cube, and yet you always seem to solve it. You are so humble in nature that you don't, you'll come in, you'll know the answer, but you tend to be more quiet about, you. We have to draw it out of you. So it was a fun opportunity to come because I really enjoy working with you, and the main reasons, and we can get into, different types of contractors, different aspects of what you do and what my needs are as a broker and my owner's needs and my client's needs. But you have just this innate ability. You are a master fabricator, but you're not just a master fabricator who knows how to use a plasma cutter and do welding and do these things. You're also I'm going to use the term visionary, but it's a solution-based vision. You have the ability to look at the bigger picture, bring it back in, and give me solutions, and you're able to break them down. You're able to cost projects. You're able to give me timelines that are correct, which is always exciting as a broker, because we deal with that a lot where the timelines just run way off the rails.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I think today will just be a lot of fun to hear about some of the projects you and I have done together, and how you are an incredible solution for tenant and tenant related TIs, owner investor related construction projects.
Thank you. So tell us, remind me how we met. We met through Michael Manson's
we actually
property.
met out at Signal Butte and Southern.
Yep, that was where we met for a
Close friend for
Yeah,
you at the time, a client for me, who ultimately became a very close friend.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a client of a friend. We've known him since my wife and I got married at his property. My father, who started Prudential, worked with him for, I don't even know, 20 years. My wife even worked for him for a while as his bookkeeper accountant. He has a property at Signal Butte and Southern, or did.
Yeah.
Right?
We
you sold
actually
it?
did subsequently sell that property. But if I remember correctly, that was actually his first ground up. And I think your dad built it.
Yeah, it might have. I don't know if it was ground up. I think it was definitely one of his first, if it was. My dad, Prudential, built it. And my younger brother, Mark, was part of the superintending on that project as well. He still works for us. He's been into some different companies in the middle of it all, but he still works for us. But yeah, that was I think the 13th. What was fun on that project was it was the last suite had never been built, and so we got to build the project. Didn't get to do all the TIs, but then got to do the last suite, which sat vacant for, was it 15 years or something?
It sat vacant for about 15 years, and we did a pretty extensive salon in there.
Yeah, it was a really nice
really
high-end
cool
salon.
Build out, and it was a kind of an unusual space because it wasn't exactly rectangular.
Yeah, that's right. It was trapezoid. It was kind of almost a pie shape with a squared off back area. And it was a gray box, so it had floor. Part of the floor was missing. Half the drywall, or no, most of the drywall was missing. I think it was.
It was almost gray shell.
Yeah, it was
no
gray
AC.
shell.
The power panels hadn't
That's
been
right.
put in. We had to relocate the plumbing, and it
Yep.
being a salon. And as we get into more of the tenant improvement stuff, we can talk a little bit about how unanticipated expense shows up, especially on salons and restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely. So we met there, and then we ended up. Michael had asked us to look at the other property a little bit. We came up with some ideas for him. We were going to maybe build an apartment complex on it, and he had started to become ill at that point, and so we ended up not proceeding. But that was going to be a big deal.
It was a fun project.
That was a fun, yeah.
It was a fun project.
Yeah, that was going to be a maker's mark kind of scenario. But you ended up selling that, I think.
I
to
did.
somebody
I ended up
else.
selling that to a development company who now is subsequently selling it to I believe, an automotive group.
So you have, as just kind of talk into that a little bit, you've been part of multiple exchanges on that property. So that's where your kind of skill set starts to kind of shine, is that you take these properties, correct me if I'm wrong, you take these properties and you figure out ways to improve them, monetize them, and provide value to different people in the buying and selling phase. And so you've been doing that for...
We're pushing 19 years. So it's been a pretty long haul. I always like to say, I take broken or good real estate and try to make it better. And, in the ideal world, I'm able to come in on the front end, solve the problems, and then dispose of the asset on the back end. And 9 times out of 10, I stay on board with the new guys, and we work it in a different angle, in a different way going forward, and continue on with our leasing team. I predominantly do retail, all commercial. My background originally was in accounting. I'm a personality type. I was less of an accountant and more of a
comedian,
more of a comedian, and a conversationalist, somebody who's
boater.
Just out there, boater. Bottom line is, I'm an admiral, commodore.
By
I don't
yourself
know.
on your own boat.
I do love boats, and I think that's part of what I like about you is I like building things. I've always enjoyed building motorcycles and cars and all of my childhood cars were older. You know, my 72 Cutlass Supreme, my 1957 Chevy that was a complete train wreck, worst college get to and from commuter
Really?
car in history, you
Yeah.
know. But it was those things I've on a much smaller scale. I know how things work conceptually, so I can fix them. And it gives me an edge in what I do because I have enough of an understanding of how construction and theory works
Yeah.
that I can at least ask some of the right questions.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, you know, people delve into what I do and they're just, I lease space. I lease space. As soon as it's signed, I'm in and I'm out. Or I sell buildings. I show up, I run numbers, and I get that building sold. The hardship is my client, you know, that is the customer. And what they often don't understand is just how important once they take on a lease or a purchase of a building, or, you know, they've got a plan on how they're going to monetize some
Yeah.
project, they need to know, what are my costs? What's my timing look like? What is the feasibility I can even do this?
And the other 100 pieces that they don't even know they don't know.
They don't know because they don't do it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons working with you is so great is because I know you, if you don't know the answer, you will find the answer and it will be correct. As opposed to telling me something that isn't true,
Yeah.
or my client.
Yeah.
You know, I have the utmost faith when I introduce somebody to you that they're getting the guy who will solve their problem, who's going to be honest, is going to, you know what he's doing, and always integrity is so important.
Oh,
And I
you're
think
kind.
you
Yes,
know, our
thank you.
6 projects that we've done together, all of them have always been people coming back to me and saying, "Oh, I'm going to use Mike going forward." Like he solved all of the issues, you know. And sometimes they're not going to like the answer.
Yeah,
Sometimes
sometimes.
it's
Yeah, that's
expensive.
the
we
hard part
find
is-
out the entire foundation shot. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens.
Well, I guess it's just kind of been ingrained into me. I think my father was the same way. You just feel bad when you miss something. And doing so many things and so much diversity throughout the years and kind of having so many different backgrounds and experiences and all of that. Kind of growing up as a builder, starting as a young kid building. When I have to do a change order, which, you know, I know it's part of the deal. And some projects, it's really how it works. You don't know certain things, and so you go in as developed as you can with as much study and due diligence as you can possibly muster up, and put it all into the deal and explain to the client what you think is going to happen. Oftentimes, I think in the industry, people don't do that. Sometimes they don't know how to do that, or it's just not part of their thought process to do that. Some clients, especially younger clients that are younger into the building, into the trades, into the real estate, whatever it is, they're just relying on the expert, right? They're relying upon this person who's calling themselves a professional. Whether it starts in the architectural side of things, oftentimes it does. Sometimes it starts in some sort of a study or a process of, you know, there's a due diligence stage. It starts with, oftentimes even before that, with a broker. And where do we do, how do we do, what do we do? You know, what's the risk involved? And but by the time the contractor's involved, you have a lot of expectations that are already in place by all the people before you. So it becomes really challenging to understand what's been explained and promised, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy working with yourself and a few other people I know, and engineers and some architects, and because you at least don't expect that your client now has this unsolvable expectation. Sometimes it's when I get to move in, like, hey, I my buddy did this and he was in 14 weeks and he's got a bigger, fancier place than this, and it's, you know, I'm only trying to do half of this, so I think we can get me in that time, and you have to go, maybe we can have the permitting done in 14 weeks, but then we have to build it, and we're not going to, know certain aspects of the job. So
yeah, I think the reality check is always hard. It's always hard when
Yeah.
we get to that point, because as a broker, we're the ever optimist. I'm the
Yes,
cheerleader.
you have to be.
Go, go, go. I think that's the greatest
yeah.
plan ever. Nobody's ever had that concept before.
So you can't tell the client, hey, I think this is a terrible deal, but I want to sell you the building
this is going
anyways.
to cost you millions of dollars, and you're probably going to fail. No, we
Doesn't work like that.
we try to rein them in, and it's just so important to be able to lean on somebody and say, hey, look, now we're at that point, and you and I have experienced this where we've dealt with other tenants coming in who've utilized other individuals, and on day one we find out nothing was explained. They weren't sure what they were taking on. There was a lot of overcommitting, and the timelines are going to be vastly longer than they thought, which starts spending their money, and it gets scary fast. And the goal is never to have a tenant feel overwhelmed and or fail, but it does happen.
Yeah, there's a set of I don't know, protocol is probably not the right word, but there's kind of some standards that are need to be explained to the tenant. What do you think, from at least your perspective, from so a person who's got a business idea, they got out of business school, maybe they've been doing something for 10 years, and they want to get started on something, so they put together a business proposal, business plan. They go to the bank. Maybe they don't go to the bank. Maybe they have private investment somehow, and they decide ultimately, hey, I want to do this. And then your company, Colliers, gets called, and you get the call somehow. What is the first thing that you do with a client that, I know there's going to be different ways this comes in, but let's just let's take this project that we've been working on that wasn't your client. You were on the owner. Client came in and went through a process of communication that we weren't part of, you weren't part of, and started to kind of believe certain ways things are going to occur. How do you handle the beginning?
We try to do our best to vet out our clients and vet out ownerships and make sure that the expectations are in the realm of reality. Now, a lot of times when represented clients come in, we don't speak to the client directly. We won't talk to the new tenant directly until we meet them on site for the first time. Sometimes, like we've had happen in the past, expectations are set. They're thinking day one they're getting the keys and opening, and they are 9 months out. Though that's where we really try to get somebody like your group engaged early on, if we can, to kind of get those expectations set. It's the typical, if you don't know the answer, find somebody who does, which is where we tend to lean hard on contractors, on architects, on engineers. At the end of the day, you can't foresee all of the issues that could happen, but it is just incredibly valuable to have the resources handy to handle the issues once they do come up. You have kind of 3 different kinds of contractors out there in the world. I like all of them. I love contractors. I think they're great. We've got handymen, and then you start having licensing conversations. You start having, there's some of the greatest contractors I know are unlicensed. It's wonderful, but unfortunately, while they're inexpensive, there is a lot of them that when they fall short, they also just disappear. So that's kind of type 1. The second type is, I always wanted to own a general contracting firm, so I went and got an MBA in project management. I can't throw a hammer. I've never built anything, but I'm great at managing people.
They understand business. That.
They get workflows, they get timelines, they understand how all of all these new systems and databases work. And I'm going to date myself, go back to like the Oracle and SAP database guys, and we'd bring in a project manager, and everybody's like, what's this person do? But they were really good at what they did. The problem is when especially with a lot of what we deal in is older buildings. And I say that laughingly because Arizona is like the youngest of the states.
Yeah.
So I'm sure
Not East Coast
this
old.
gets worse if you're
Yeah.
like in New York. This is 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
But here you will be dealing in second, third, fourth generation. And then we typically tear it down and rebuild it at that point. But you're opening a can of worms every time you change a use, combine suites, you gut a building, go from single tenant to multi-tenant, go from multi-tenant to big box. Every time you make these changes, things pop up. And if you are a wonderful manager of people, now you have to, the onus goes on you to go find people who understand what's
Find
going
all
on.
the detailed people.
Because you're not that guy.
Yeah.
So then you've got your third kind of contractor, which is really where you fall in. For me, I often say master fabricator.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd like to
that's your
believe
thing.
that, yeah.
I mean, that is your thing. You understand it, and you'll even analyze it, figure it out before you tell me there was a problem.
Yeah.
Which is great, because it's not, hey, we've got a problem, and then back on me. Well, how should we handle it? Well, I don't know. I'm not a contractor.
Yeah.
So those are my kind of three contractors when I say I think there are three of them. And like you said, there's a time and a place for everyone.
Every one of them. I see a lot of people in the trades that are really skilled, but they're not almost free like a handyman would be in a commercial setting. You know, so you kind of have to evaluate, maybe find somebody that you can ask, what's the longevity, what's the scope of this repair? Like what are the things that could be an issue before you decide which of these levels of contractor you're going to go towards, and not maybe fall on your own sword because you brought the wrong level in, saved a bunch of money initially, and now you're calling a bigger contractor to solve the issue for you.
Exactly. And I think scope plays a role in when we're talking about more the handyman line is, certain, I'm going to say TIs, tenant improvements, the ends don't justify the means.
Yeah, they don't really fall
so
into
it's
that.
really hard for you with an actual construction crew to come do a $2,000 TI job for me. By the time you mobilize, you've already spent the money that you're going to make. So there definitely is a place in the world for really good, like you said, tradesmen who've done all the trades, know their business, but they're just doing the small jobs, doing a job that's going to take a day or two.
Yeah.
The larger scale projects, the entitlement projects, that's where you get into your project management.
Yeah.
That GC is awesome at the 1.5 year long. We're going to change the zoning. We're going to bring in the design crew. I've got 4 architects working on this. We've got 2 lobbyists. We're pulling out all the stops.
Yeah.
That's the time and a place for that. And then for everyday contracting work, I really like where your vein is, which is that solution on the front end based planning. I think it just makes all the difference in the world, and that you're willing to tell people things they don't want to hear.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the value.
It's the key
to our business is having, kind of understanding the majority of the engineering trades pretty well, non-specializing in them, but understanding them well, having extensive backgrounds and 15 plus years in them, spread across the construction industry, in the manufacturing space, production space, in light industrial, lots of mining, lots of semiconductor is my background. But being able to go into a building with a client, you mentioned to me when I asked you what's the value that we can bring to you as I'm trying to find ways to improve our presence in the market. So if you bring in this middle contractor you mentioned, who's incredible business guy, they do a lot of big projects. They have multiple project managers. They show up out and they say, okay, we need to know what we're looking at, and they walk around and go, okay, well, I need to probably bring architect out, maybe an engineer. We got to probably bring a AC guy, and they start kind of going down the list.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine your responses. Well, then why did we call you? I mean, obviously you're going to need them eventually.
Sure. But it's like when they send out a business development person instead of an estimator the first time I meet them.
Exactly.
I walk a whole project for an hour and a half with my owner, and at the end, he or she looks at us and goes, "Wow, can you get back out here tomorrow with an estimator?"
Yeah.
I thought you were the estimator.
Yeah.
You don't know the answer.
Yeah.
So it makes a huge.
Yeah, we want to sign here at 3:00.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
come on, can you give me a rough number in your head?
How can we get from point A to point B faster? And that's the gift. That's the beauty of what you guys do. Your ability, you made the quick, fast, and cheap. What I've always found with you is that you're able to be fast and good, which is unique.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that's because you understand and know how all of the different trades work. So when push comes to shove and you can't get a sub out,
Yeah.
well, you're an amateur AC tech,
Yeah.
I hear. You know how.
Actually,
how
I can't do it professionally, but I
Right.
do my own house for sure.
And you can identify the problems and get me the answers without having to bring the AC guys out.
Yeah.
Plumbing, you know when you're in over your depth, but you understand plumbing. Where you really shine is on the electrical. I on numerous occasions I've just been really, really impressed because we'll get 2-3 bids and 2 of them come back. This is a 120-day problem. It's going to cost $40,000.
Yeah.
We have to remove all the SES. We need to bring in a transformer. And you come out and you look at it and you go, well, I know the guys who build these boxes and I know how much power these can handle.
Yeah.
And I know that if I move this here and I move this here and we horseshoe around, we don't have to build an entire new enclosure.
Absolutely.
We can get this done in under 60 days. It will be absolutely to code and it will all make sense.
Yeah.
And when I go back to ownership and I tell them, they go, well, that can't be possible.
Yeah.
How are we off by 60 grand? How are my timelines 80 days different?
Yeah.
But that's what you bring to the table is the way you look at things, the way you're able to see the structure in them. Yeah. And that's just cool. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
It's been a long process to gain all that knowledge,